Hey everybody, how's it going? It is Max and Trev with BuzzTox here with our Westworld Episode 2 reaction and review. I just want to make it really clear though, we seen the episode 20 minutes ago, and we're just giving our brief thoughts, okay? If you want real analysis, an hour-long analysis of Episode 2, that'll come in the next coming days. Next 2 days maybe? I don't know, it doesn't matter. How's it going, Trev?
Very good, very good.
There's a lot to talk about this episode. And just briefly, I want to talk about the episode as a whole. Very impressed. After episode 1, this is a great follow-up. Music was fantastic. Cinematography was fantastic.
Yeah.
I found that, there was still action, but it was a little less, but I was still on the edge of my seat. Everything's amazing, but we really learned a lot about the other side of the story.
Yeah, sci-fi heavy episode.
Very sci-fi heavy episode, which makes me really nervous because I like the Planet of the Apes aspect where the main character is Dolores. And I love kind of the androids having the top bill.
Yeah.
So I'm a little scared now that we did develop more with Bernard and we learned more about how the world operates. But I understand it's necessary to the story, and I did enjoy it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. You got to paint a picture though. You got to see different layers in order to enjoy the whole thing.
No, obviously I loved it, but I'm just scared because I love Dolores and she wasn't in it as much as I wanted her to.
Yeah.
But we really see what happens outside. So we see kind of the build up. We see this guy come in, a new character named William, and he comes in with his friend, and they're getting ready. And this white hat guy, William, he's kind of nervous. He doesn't want to do it.
Shy guy.
Very shy guy. Very golden boy. He's just what a guy. What an angel. And he goes in. We learn more about the world. The weapons, they are actually real, from the movie. And you actually go into the Westworld. It's not like you go in like an Animus like we were speculating.
Yeah.
And they said that, these weapons, they do shoot, but they don't harm humans. So obviously there's heat signatures or something like that, like in the movie.
Yeah.
Where you can't shoot actual humans.
It's a program not to shoot. Which
is very important for later in the episode, because we end up with Dolores, okay? And we see very little of her, but we see her meeting with Bernard, or more likely, Bernard is meeting with her. And he's communicating with her kind of in private over, all these little talks. And what was interesting about this conversation was that he made her erase
their interaction.
Yeah.
So there was something definitely going on there. And there's a voice at the beginning that wakes her up.
Yes, and to me that sounded like Bernard.
It did. But then they sort of faded it in to a different voice. Right? They faded into the security guard talking about it. So it's weird. There's definitely...
Well, it kind of shows...
There's a lot more. So I think we're going to get that in pieces as we go.
Yeah, and I found it interesting how he made Dolores erase it when she questioned him. It's like a higher level of intelligence where she's questioning him now.
Yeah.
And now he has to erase her memory because of that purpose. But that voice that we were talking about made her go out and get a gun. This gun is set up. I guarantee that's a real gun. That's a loaded weapon that will kill anybody. It'll kill any human. It's a legit gun. It doesn't read heat signatures. Yeah. It's a real thing, and I think Bernard might want to start some chaos.
You think it's Bernard?
It possibly could be Bernard. I'm not sure. But there was a lot of...
But there's so many... if we go down that route, there's really so many layers we could go. So maybe we'll save that for the analysis.
Yeah, but there was a lot of... Let's go on to Bernard really quick. And a tidbit on that was, what did Ford say to Bernard?
Oh, I like how your mind works. Oh, I know how
your mind works. Look, this may be over-analysis, but that could lend to maybe Bernard is... Why is he the lead programmer?
Yeah.
Because he's a fucking robot.
Yeah, and he could do it way better.
And maybe
at a certain point.
Yeah, and who knows? He could be a robot in there. You never know.
And Ford is full-on Geppetto when we see him later on.
Yeah.
Right? He's got very, very deep motivations beyond just building an amusement park.
Oh, for sure. And I find that he always wants, he created this park himself, but he's always seeking connections with other people that he's created, which I find really fascinating. But let's go into the Westworld itself. And first, let's talk about Teddy. Teddy's just was totally disrespected in this episode.
I think he's going to be for a while.
It's totally disrespected. They set him up. I like the guy. I knew he's the loser. That's what he is. He's an absolute loser.
Yeah.
And we talked about it. He's meant to lose, it seems like. And this episode, that's what I love about the show, is they introduce a main character, but then in the next episode, they flip it on its head, and he's just the guy that gets shot in the bar by the guest.
Fill him full of holes.
And then he's the guy that's getting hosed down in, a concentration camp of androids.
Yeah, it's bad.
It was terrible. Absolutely terrible.
That's a good scene, though.
I love the imagery.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved the imagery. And coinciding with that, we're with this white hat guy. This guy's name is William. And, you know, he's a good guy. And we talked about that earlier. He doesn't do anything wrong. And his friend is total opposite. He's totally taking it in.
Just kind of egging him on.
Yeah, and you really see it where, you know, you really question it ethically when that old man, for example, when did he fall down?
He falls off the back of a wagon.
When he falls off the back of the wagon, he's reaching out to help. But then his friend disconnects from it because he sees it as literally as a video game.
Yeah.
Don't help him, it starts the quest. I don't want to be in a quest right now, I just want you to get me a drink.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting concept to deal with because it's so real. And then his friend eventually stabs him in the hand.
Yeah, and he's very apathetic to all the androids. Even he doesn't want to sleep with hookers. As his guys having a foursome with dudes and girls, getting slapped. Like he really is like having a hard time with it.
Yeah, and initially when I saw like the trailer for this and I saw him, I knew he was like a real guest, and I really want to focus on the hosts. I feel like the hosts are so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that he doesn't take a primary character role. And we have a really good theory about him that Trevor came up with. But before we talk about that, I just want to mention what I initially thought was that it's going to be a Romeo and Juliet dynamic, kind of hinting on the that imagery in the first episode, and that, you know, they would kind of fall in love. And what do we see? We see him hand Dolores the can, just like Teddy did and just like the Man in Black did,
yes.
Almost starting a quest. I'll let you run with it.
Yeah, so I just got thinking that maybe this was on a different timeline than the entire show was. And it was back in time, and it was quite possibly the Man in Black in his first time that he ever went there. He didn't have any major connections with any of the main characters that would be non-existent at this point, and they all seem to be in their place, and it just seems like there's something there.
And there was a disconnect in the story. If you notice, Teddy never interacts with Dolores. He just goes to the bar. It's almost like they never configured Teddy to interact with Dolores.
Yeah. In that way too. And he was the one that ran into his shoulder. Remember? He ran into that guy's shoulder.
That's even more imagery.
So there's very, very subtle hints that this was not the same timeline.
Dolores wasn't glitching in when she was with William, the guy in the white hat, but she was kind of glitching out. These violent delights have violent ends in the other.
Yeah,
without him.
She had some different haircut too.
But what's interesting in this is that this white hat guy, William, I think Teddy is actually the recreation of who this guy is.
Yeah, he's the White Knight.
Yes, this White Knight figure, William, he made such an impact on Westworld 30 years ago that they recreated this guy, Teddy.
Mm-hmm.
And Teddy is the guy who's meant to fall in love with Dolores, who's meant to do all these things, but eventually always loses. And that's like his downfall, is he's programmed to lose and die fighting for Dolores.
Well, he also can't go any further than that. He's a host. Yeah. So what happens to this guy as he goes on? We already know his arc in a way. Like, he is, whether it ends up being like we were saying before this, like Will the White Hat, and then maybe the Man in Black's name is Bill the Black Hat kind of thing. But if that is the case, maybe there's something that switches in him, that he says, oh, I need to be the Black Hat in order to be with Dolores.
No, exactly.
Maybe someone's sort of working it, so no, he can't have that. So we program Dolores to not ever interact with that White Hat guy. And Teddy's that fill-in that she only sees eyes for Teddy and doesn't allow anybody else in, so he needs to be the Black Hat and literally kill Teddy off.
Yeah, it's almost like Breaking Bad in a sense, where we're seeing this character, William, progress into the Black Hat, who he eventually becomes.
We're still scrambling with the theory because we don't know how they would sort of sort this out.
Yeah, there's a lot of sides to it, and I think it's so, to me, it seems so real and so legit, but I'm just trying to think of like the analytics behind it, because, you know, right now we have so much going on. Dolores is, you know, glitching out. She's talking to Bernard. All these stories are happening. So how do you tell a story 30 years in the past while trying to tell a story in the present?
Well, if he keeps coming back to visit Dolores, then you're just going to see a Dolores and him interaction. And unless she starts confiding in him, like saying the things she said to
then
him.
We'll know.
But I think it's just going to be vanilla interactions, and he's going to fall in love with her, and then something's going to switch and he's gonna think that it was so real that he can't stand for that, and he'll constantly come back.
Or they mirror the stories, and we see William fall in love with Dolores, and then he makes her self-aware of her existence, and then they rebel, and then they take Dolores, and what do? They
liberate her.
They wipe her.
They could.
They wipe her memory, and then she gets repaired, whatever, and then Black Cat comes back and says, "Oh, they wiped your memory. You don't remember me, Dolores?" And then he goes and rapes her, and Teddy kind of took his place.
Well, we never saw him rape her. I just want to make that clear. I was just thinking about that.
He only dragged her by the hair.
I know, that's awful, but everyone's watching. So maybe he's undercover.
Yes.
Right? Like, that's just something on the fly. He slammed the door behind her, and it's just assumed that she was raped.
Slams it behind the door and then has a deep conversation about her, like,
hey, like, I'm still trying to work this out. We don't know. And he's obviously being so evil. It's so obvious that he's evil.
Yeah.
But at the same time, maybe he's so over the top because he's trying to break the game.
No, I think he's definitely trying to break the game. And I think, he's a good guy at heart. I'm convinced now that this William is 30 years younger Man in Black.
Yeah.
But let's move on quickly. I want to talk about Maeve.
Yeah.
Maeve.
Yeah.
They really focused on her this episode.
She's actually shaping up to be a really good character.
Very cool. Very, very great. So, she isn't a good enough prostitute. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting where they're like, they literally treat them like livestock. Like, it's kind of gross.
Do you think they age? Or
No.
slower? Or they always just, like, they stay the same?
No, I don't think they age. And then we see, with her, that's interesting is that she's actually flashing between her experience. She flashes between her, seems to be dying by the Man in Black himself. And then
but in a totally different scenario.
Yeah, so that was like her in a different life, so to speak.
But she treats it as her dream, though.
Yeah, she treats it as a dream, and there's the huge imagery of, I count backwards from 3, and that's how I deal with that's how I wake myself up. And she's been doing that the whole episode, but then she did it to wake herself up in the actual real world when they were working on her.
Yeah, but they had mentioned that the girl programmer that had kissed the other hooker was mentioning, oh yeah, they had dreams, and they have more nightmares. But then they said, like, it's a way of making them interact with one another. But that's really cool because in lucid dreaming in real life, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to question yourself in order to make sure that you have control in a dream, and that's what happened. So she was able to control herself and wake herself up.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do with her in the future, because in the next episode, when they throw her away and they bring her back up in Westworld, those two programmers, or whatever the hell you want to call them, they're almost embarrassed the fact that they didn't put her to sleep. They're embarrassed that she walked all the way out there. So it seems to me like they just kind of threw her away, put her away, and kind of didn't say anything about it.
Exactly.
So she's probably going to wake up being like, why am I getting these flashes of weird future, weird stuff?
She could think it's a dream, though, or she might not be able to compensate for it, and that's what
I think it'll definitely be a nightmare. It'll start as a nightmare, and then I think you're going to see it slowly progress into, holy shit, what is going on here?
Exactly.
But that's all I got to say about this episode. You got anything else to say?
No, that was it. Like, Man in the Black goes deeper into the game.
I think it goes really deep. Yeah, he just goes around and kills a bunch of people. He's progressing for the maze.
But no, he got his answer to where the entrance is to the maze, so we'll see what this maze is about.
Yeah, so all of his scenes are amazing. But,
yeah, he went, like, full cowboy there.
But yeah, so we got really deep into some theories just on our reaction and review, so wait until we can actually do some hard research.
And mulling over them.
And mull over them and talk about it over the phone for hours. And decide on what to say. But you can expect a Westworld video probably Wednesday, and I got a lot to say about this episode.
Yeah,
so.
There's a lot of content here.
But until then, everybody, take care.
See ya.